Good morning. I would like to thank Carla and the Planning Committee for the invitation to come to Oakland today to talk about our Reimagining Middle Grades effort that we have going on in Broward County Public Schools. So essentially right now we are in the second year of our Reimagining Middle Grades effort. And how it came about is that our superintendent, along with a few other superintendents in the state of Florida, received a call to action where they were asked to look at the condition of middle schools and then assess where improvements could potentially be made. So the superintendent then came back to us at the district, and as a team, we really took that upon ourselves to really take a look and see what direction we could possibly go with this. Now, before I actually get too in the weeds of trying to explain what we are doing in Broward County Public Schools, I wanted to spend some time talking to you about our why and our how. So in terms of our why at Broward County Public Schools, Broward County Public Schools has always wanted its students to be literate and to be academically successful. But really, when we were looking at reimagining middle grades, we knew that we had to take a different perspective, and we knew that we had to encompass the whole child. So really, Broward County Public Schools wants every child to be literate, emotionally healthy, and academically successful in a safe, experiential learning environment. That's our why. Now, how we're doing it, we have three big rocks with this Reimagining Middle Grades effort, and we really were frank in taking a close look at what we were dealing with so that way we can decide what approach should be next. So we first decided, or we looked at the condition of our classrooms, or the state of learning, teaching and learning. And what we found was that teachers were traditionally teaching students the way they were taught. So what does this mean? Sage on the stage, everybody in rows, and nobody says a word. And what we wanted to do is we really wanted to take the time to disrupt that pattern. And what we had to do was that we had to find first followers, we had to find the willing, and we really had to infuse the methodology or the approach of project-based learning. Through project-based learning, the students are the owners of the learning. Through project-based learning, students have a voice in their learning, and they also have feedback sessions in order to actually grow in their learning with a manifestation of their knowledge gained at the end through a public product. The other thing that we had to take a look at was our connections. We had to take a look at our connections, not just peer-to-peer, but also student to adult. And we saw that we were lacking in that area because we wanted to create a culture in our schools where students felt welcomed, where students felt like they belonged, where students felt like they had a purpose. And really, we knew that those areas were room for improvement for us. So really we had to spend, we're still spending time with our adults and really teaching them how to have these kinds of relationships with our middle school students. And the other big rock that we have has to revolve around applied learning. For a while in Broward County Public Schools, we kind of had a drought when it came to our elective classes. And essentially what that means is kids were basically double dosed for reading, they were double dosed for math, and basically it just meant that they were in a core class all day long with little room to actually have an outlet. So we wanted to include more electives as we were reimagining our middle schools, and what that meant is that even some middle schools decided to change their master schedule. They wanted to create that structure so that that way they could actually have more elective opportunities, because we know that sometimes even the most disengaged student can sometimes be so hooked on school that they'll say, they might not be too crazy about going to school, but they'll go to school for band. Or I can't wait to get to my debate class, you know, because that's their fun for the day, and that's what gets them hooked on learning. And we also know that through these elective classes, sometimes it creates for them an opportunity where they now are participating in an extracurricular activity because now they belong to something bigger than them. So essentially, as we incorporate these three big rocks, what we hope to see is we hope to see increased student engagement and also improved student achievement. Now here is a disclaimer as we are reimagining middle grades. Broward County Public Schools is the 6th largest district in the country. And note, we are not to scale. We're only in our second year of implementation. But in terms of our approach to how we are dealing with these 44 middle schools, we have them divided into different categories with a focus. So we have 4 schools that are in an ambassador category. Those are our combination schools, our behavior change schools that service middle grade students, that they get a light touch of what it's like to be a part of the Reimagining middle grades efforts, because there's other competing interests at their schools. Then we have another set of schools, 15 schools, that have a singular focus of SEL. Then we have another 15 schools that have a singular focus of PBL, or project-based learning. And then we have 10 schools that we call them the Community Foundation of Broward Schools, because they are tied closely to a grant that I will get into in a minute. Now, these 10 schools, obviously, by that list being so exhaustive, you can see that there's a lot more energies being poured into those 10 schools than the others. But essentially, the Community Foundation of Broward Schools have a dual role. They have teachers that are involved in project-based learning, and they have teachers that are involved in social-emotional learning. And they have more teachers that are participating in professional learning in those areas than in the other schools. So obviously, there's a more accelerated component there than the other schools. Also, because of the alignment with the grant, we are also able to hire additional personnel, like a community liaison. And at these schools, we also offer personalization classes. Now, these 10 schools that are closely related to the grant from the Community Foundation of Broward, they are able to fulfill the grant requirements that we were able to achieve in order to accelerate our Reimagining middle grades effort. So Community Foundation of Broward is a nonprofit organization in Broward County. We've had a long-standing relationship with them dating back to 2012, 2013, and they've always had some level of interest in wanting to impact the high school graduation rate. But their interest is not necessarily, their interest is to impact the high school graduation rate through middle school. So that's where their interest always lies. So what's unique about this particular effort is that we've been able to partner with them to accelerate our Reimagining middle grades work, because we have been able to obtain a grant from them, which is the largest grant in their history. And it's a $3 million grant over the course of 3 years, so $1 million for each year. But in addition to that, what makes it so unique is that it's a matching grant. So they're also expecting for our district to put up $3 million as well. So everybody has skin in the game. Now, with that being said, the nice thing about the relationship that we have with the Community Foundation of Broward is that they are constantly pushing us to advocate for those students that would traditionally be overlooked. So it's not just about what we're doing, it's what are we doing for those students. And what we've done is that we've worked with our research department to identify a criteria, a set of criteria, to really hone in on some students. And we looked at standardized test results, we looked at GPAs, and what we were able to develop was a criteria that identified 1,448 students across 10 schools. And what we've done for those students is that we've placed them into a personalization class. And the best way to describe the personalization class is that it's like having a school mom or a school dad. You've got that teacher who has that student in their class, and it's, are you ready for class? Do you have what you need? Do you have a folder? Do you have a pencil? Have you checked your grades? Where, what are you doing for makeup work? And it's that level of accountability. But also, we take that forum to be able to teach social emotional skills to these students as well. So through the SEL explicit curriculum of Second Step, teachers are able to engage students in conversation on a weekly basis about grit, about mindset, about qualities that make a good friend, about thought patterns, decision-making, that really are going to help them in the moment, but will also help them as they continue throughout their years as well. So we are accountable to the Community Foundation of Broward for their work, for our work. And every quarter we have to report to them on absences, behavior, and grades. But to give us a fair baseline of, are we getting better, are we getting worse, are we staying the same, we have developed the criteria, like I said before, for the 1,448 students. So what we did is that we took that same criteria and we found similar students across our 34 other middle schools. So now we're comparing apples to apples. So now we're looking at our 1,448 students and we're saying, do they have fewer absences than the comparison group? We're looking at our 1,448 students and we're saying, do they have fewer behavior incidents than the comparison group? And when we look at the GPAs, do our students have a higher GPA than the students in the comparison group? And that's our benchmark in terms of, are we getting better or are we getting worse? So last year, year one, we were flatlined. And we were like, oh, we don't know if we're doing this right. We're not too sure if we're on the right path, because everything was just like, the data came back where everything was just the same or worse. And it was just like, what are we doing here? But this year, once we analyzed our first quarter results, there's a glimmer of hope. And we are almost on the path where we're like, okay, we're doing this. All right, so when we looked at the results from the first quarter, what we saw was, in terms of behavior incidents, we did see fewer behavior incidents with our target population students than the comparison students. When we looked at grades, our target population students had an increased GPA than the other students. So that is a promise in terms of where we are with our analysis, but it's just something to keep in mind. In closing, I do want to offer that in terms of lift, we are cognizant of our lift as we're trying to do this in Broward County Public Schools. This slide can also probably be titled Things That Keep Us Up at Night. But really, funding and sustainability are things that do keep us up at night, but we are really having authentic and sincere conversations in year two, because we do have to be cognizant that we are going to be owning this once funding could potentially go away. So I knew that speaking about our work was a challenge to talk about in 12 minutes, and that's why it was that was the description in a nutshell. But please know that in terms of staying up to date with our efforts and where we are, our Twitter handle is there as well as in the attendee packet, so that way you can see where we go from here. Thank you very much for your time.